My name is Usha. I'm one of the TAs for this class. I am here today to introduce Mark Fabionar. Mark is the director of the Hub, which is the Center on Campus for Diversity, Vitality, and Creativity. In addition to that, he's also been teaching classes in leadership, culture theory, community building, and business for 18 years. And he is a big fan of basketball and chocolate. So please welcome.
Good morning. All these beautiful people here. Yes, especially my section, the 230. It looks like ASI is giving away free cookies. Did folks notice that? How many people got a free cookie already? All right. Yeah, I don't know where are people getting their cookies from? Those who, where's that? And what it's about? What is it about? So it's about elections. Meet and greet. Okay. So I encourage folks to go meet and greet, get involved in the political process, and at the very least get a free cookie. I'll go at least twice because there's chocolate in it. Today's talk is on being in community, so it correlates with that theme from the chapter in our book. So I want to talk about 5 elements of being in community, and the first thing I want us to do, though, is as one of the things that we learned from the book and from this leadership class is that we're developing into a community of practice. Okay, and so we're going to do a really brief 1-minute practice before we get started into this talk, and it's something that I want you to experiment with and see how you do. We do this in our in my section every week. So if you can, get comfortable in your chairs. If you're not uncomfortable already, who's uncomfortable in their chairs? Get more comfortable in your chairs. Put your pencils down and close your eyes. If you guys, those of you who have phones, please turn them off for the lecture, please. Close your eyes. Thank you. And what we're going to do is a basic awareness practice. And there's quite a bit of research on awareness and mindfulness that's being done in schools and businesses and sports teams and prisons, that it actually helps people's physiology, it helps them focus and helps them be grounded. Quite a bit of research done on this now. So let's just do this. So even if it's a bit awkward, just bring your attention to the feeling of your feet on the floor. What does it feel like to feel my feet on the floor? Okay. Just notice it. Bring your attention to the feel of the chair underneath you and just noticing it. Bring your attention to that which seems to be external, outside yourself. So you might be aware of my voice. You might be aware of some buzzing. You might be aware of there's other people around me. And all I want you to do right now is just pay attention to that without following it too deeply. Just watch it or observe it. You might be aware of the late students. You might be aware of the feeling of your clothes on your skin. Just pay attention to that. Awareness of profanity in the classroom. Now bring your attention to that which seems to be internal. So basically bring attention to any ideas or thoughts you're having, any feelings, any images. And often with folks who do this practice for the first time, it's like, what is this? What am I doing? This is awkward. This is silly. I'm feeling self-conscious. If those thoughts come up, just observe it. Just pay attention to it and observe whatever else goes on. So for the next 30 seconds, just pay attention to that which is external and that which is internal, and just observe it. Just for 30 seconds. right, when you're ready, open your eyes. Let's hear from one or two people how that went for them. Let's hear from one or two people how that went for them. No right answers. Yeah. Good. Right. Definitely. One more person. Let's hear from one more person. Yeah. Right. The mind is really, really active. So this is something that if you continue to do 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes a day, it greatly improves your health and greatly improves your ability to focus, greatly improves, decreases stress levels. There's a lot of research on this. About 3 different centers at one center at UC Davis, one at UCLA, and one at UC San Diego that is doing this research on this type of awareness practice and how it affects physiology, performance, ability to lead, all these different things. So it's a simple thing. Just encourage you to experiment with it if you want to. It also enables people to be more present and grounded to whatever's being presented. So that's an advantage to me because it feels like people are more here. Does it feel a little bit different than 1 minute ago? Yeah, and that's an advantage to me, the storyteller, and you as the listener. This is a talk, a lecture, and a conversation on being in communities, and there are 5 elements I want to describe or offer to you to explore or experiment within your communities. Okay? Steve Connell offered a poem on HBO Deaf Poetry probably about 10 years ago, and I'm curious, how did that poem land for this group, for this particular community right here? We are a community. We did our initial practice, which was come in here, most of us on time. We came in there. I asked you to experiment with another practice. You did it. And we're offering now a little bit of content for you to consider, okay? So this is not just me speaking to you, this is us engaging in a conversation now, yeah? So how did people receive this poem? How do people receive this poem either in terms of ideas, in terms of images, or in terms of emotions? And can you tell us your name?
And like, you know, not doing how to do
Okay, so it resonated with you in terms of feeling confined, not feeling connected, not feeling a part of something other than yourself. Good. Let's hear from some more people. How else did that land? No right answers. I mean, that was a barrage of information that came to you, both in terms of your mind and also in terms of how he's embodying that poem. So I don't expect you to say, oh, this is what the poem's about. More curious about how did it land? What comes up for you, right, organically? Tell us your name. And Caitlin, you're not just talking to me, you're talking to all of us? Okay. Right. The way in which he embodied and shared his message, right? Good. That you found that compelling. Yeah. How did it bring you in? Good. Thank you. Let's hear from one or two more. Let's hear from 2 more people. Yep. Can you speak up a little bit? Because I'm having trouble hearing you, so everybody can hear. Almost like he's critiquing a community or a generation, saying we feel entitled that we always want the next best thing or something else. Yeah, we don't appreciate what we have. Yeah. very transgressive about what he's offering, right? It's for some of us, including myself, who watch Steve perform this, it's like to feel the power and the intensity behind his word and his story. And then the subject matter, the content itself is how do we get beyond feeling so isolated? How do we get beyond feeling so contained or even oppressed, right, for certain communities? But how do we get beyond feeling imprisoned or oppressed? Let's hear from one more people. This is really good feedback. Somebody over here in this area. Yep. So reminder to express gratitude for what we have in our communities. Yeah, good. Thank you. So we're talking about five elements of being in community. And I want to use hip hop as a conceptual framework for that. Okay, I'm not a hip hop scholar, nor am I a hip hop artist, nor am I a hip hop expert. Hip hop was something that really influenced me growing up when I was in grade school and middle school. So it's something that I feel connected to, but I'm definitely not a scholar. A lot of what I'm going to present on is informed by scholars who are interdisciplinary, Trisha Rose, Sharice Cheney, Jeff Chang, and others. So I'm not just here talking about things that I don't know nothing about. There's actually some scholarship and information behind it, but I'm using it, and it's something that I have a personal interest in. Okay? So hip hop as a lens for understanding being in community. So let me give you a brief context and story about hip hop. Okay, those shoes are. When I was in 6th grade, I found a pair of Puma shoes that happened to fit me and liberated them from the store, which was a challenge because I had really big feet then. I was really gangly and awkward. And I got really involved in this thing that was, this was 1983 at the time, that was about breakdancing and music and beats and a culture and a community, and I got really involved in it, really interested in it. And so when I was putting this together, I was recalling a time when a friend of mine who was also a b-boy, who was a breakdancer, we were asked to go to another friend's house and graffiti in his room. Create art in his room with permission from his parents. And at the time I was in 6th grade and we're, writing Fresh or Vicious, whatever it was at the time, it was a long time ago, on this wall, and I go, wow, reflecting back on it now, I go, this is really interesting. This is a very upper middle class professional family, Jewish American family, and we were coming from working class, lower middle class, to come in and express art from a culture that we were just being introduced about, And I wanted to understand what was the dynamics of hip hop that came from a primarily urban, working class, poor communities of color in the East Coast, to where over a span of 20 plus years, most of the listeners in the United States were young white males, young white children, and then as a movement it became global. Now imagine this is a movement that was started by kids, literally kids 13, 14, 15, 16, up into their 20s with no money, right? And all of a sudden it's global, it's in popular culture everywhere. We're probably now so embedded in it that we don't even know that how much hip hop has influenced the way we talk, right? So I want to talk a little bit, just give a brief history of hip hop, really quickly. And the first thing I want to say is that if we look in the 1970s, we see a lot of major corporations begin to bring their work overseas. So we have this type of deindustrialization. So you have urban areas like in New York, like in Detroit, like in Los Angeles, especially in Detroit, where working class families, working class communities of color folks were losing their jobs. And consequently, you had a bunch of young kids whose parents weren't able to provide funds for them to go to the YMCA, right? Who didn't have funds for them to go to soccer practice, the Boy Scouts, the Boys and Girls Clubs, the Little League. And so they were out without any material support for them to do activities that they normally would do, okay? How many people were involved in after-school programs or extracurricular programs growing up? Let's hear. That's good. That's good. Legal ones. Legal ones. All right. Good. 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 Let's keep it legal. Let's hear a few of them. Which ones? Let's hear from a few people. What just popcorn. What things were you involved in as kids? Actually, let me rephrase that. What things were you involved in as kids that you found especially meaningful in terms of community? That was like, man, I'm really glad that I had this. Sports. What type of sports? Just pop it out, folks. One at a time. Soccer, basketball, good. Football, baseball. What other things were people involved in that they found really meaningful when they were growing up that they couldn't do without? Huh? Theater. Yeah, definitely. What else? Summer camp. What else? Band. What else? Choir? Okay. Good, good, good. Now imagine if that all went away. Imagine if your parents, or maybe this happened to you. Maybe you never had that. Imagine if your parents or your family members or your community didn't have the resources where you could do those things. Just for 30 seconds or 20 seconds, imagine what would you have done, what would you have felt? All right? Okay. So when I say that you have an economic situation where jobs go overseas and you're left in communities that are already impoverished and poor, and by many scholars' account, very violent communities for various reasons, and any extra money that would go to the YMCA day pass goes away, then what are you left with? Then how do you feel about yourself? Okay. There's been a stigma for the urban poor and for poor people in general, but definitely amongst communities of color where they're often demonized, called bad names, seen as violent, seen as criminals, seen as not valuable bodies. We kind of still see this legacy with Andy Lopez. We see this legacy all over the country with Trayvon Martin and others who are getting killed because of their, for at least some of the reason, if not a large part of the reason, because of their skin. Right? So we have a history and a legacy, and we won't go into an ethnic studies lecture of this, but just there's a history and legacy of demonizing, meaning making these bodies of these people seem like demons or evil or other with those who have brown bodies, those who are low income. Okay? So that's part of the cultural context in which hip-hop emerged from. Okay? Does that make sense so far? Follow me? Okay. So, let's talk about the elements of hip-hop. 5 elements before I continue with the context and history. I already told you that I was a neophyte breakdancer who under bridges. Luckily, I never got caught. Much people in that. So what are the let's like what are 4 main elements of hip-hop? You can guess. What's that? Rhyme, yeah. Rapping or MCing, right? Yeah. Knowledge is seen by some as the 5th element of hip hop, in which black history or nationalism, cultural nationalism is a part of. So I won't say specific to black history, but although that's been a major cultural current of it. But knowledge, definitely. Knowledge, history of self, yeah. True. DJing, absolutely. DJing, MCing, knowledge. That's 3. We have 2 more. Can you speak up a little bit? Yeah, it's definitely, I think that's more like, it's a cultural movement, so it's embedded in all these elements. But I think the way that I hear you saying it, it's more aligned with knowledge, right? Knowing who you are, knowing who your community is, right? Sharing meetings, sharing practices, kind of like what we're trying to do right here. Right? One more time. Definitely expression. Is there a specific type of expression that you need? No. Definitely. So it's a very expressive cultural movement. Bboying, what's that? Yeah, it's largely breakdancing. Yeah. So we have MCing or rapping. We have DJing. We have knowledge. We have Bboying or Bgirling, right? I want to make sure everybody's including this. And that's largely have to do with breakdancing. What's one more element in the talk? Yeah, artwork, graffiti. So what you have is the elements of hip hop: b-boying, DJing, MCing, graffiti, and knowledge. And for most folks, they're like, yeah, that's okay, that's good, you know. But when we look at this movement, we can't fall asleep right in front of it. Wait, hey, don't fall asleep right in front of us. When we look at the cultural context in which this movement emerged from, it's a pretty powerful thing, again, that this came from 14 to 15-year-olds, 20-year-olds, and now it's a global movement within a span of 30 years. So let's look at what it really is. So I already mentioned that here are folks without any resources who aren't able to go to after-school programs or go to the YMCA. And so what do? They create their own practices as a community, okay? So b-boying has a lot to do about expressing through the body, right, by dancing. But not only did they do that, not only did they express power, and remember, they're living in communities where they feel like they don't have a lot of power, right? So they're able to express power through their bodies, similarly to how you saw Steve Connell perform, right? But now they're dressing up in clothes that make them feel powerful, right? They're wearing a certain style, right, that makes them feel powerful, and they're expressing that through movement, right? Again, communities that feel they don't have any power. They're sharing their story through rhyming, through emceeing, right? They are, Steve Connell talks about how that folks feel constrained. If you're living in an urban area where you don't have a lot of resources and you're living in projects or you're living in places that are dilapidated, you still want to be able to feel seen, right? You want to be seen, especially as young teenagers, right? And so folks spray artwork onto subways. Now why subways? Why not just walls? So everybody can see their art around the whole city, right? And so one of the early pioneering graffiti artists or muralists was named, his tag name was Seen. I want to be seen. I don't have any money, I don't have any of this, but I have power. I'm going to express it in the ways that I have, and I'm going to be seen. Okay? Same with music. There was a lot of critique about how people. There's a song, I don't remember who it was, but it was like, we love the cars that go boom. Right? Who knows the artist from that song? Anybody? I'm dating myself. But think about it. If you don't have a lot of space to live in, and if you don't have a lot of power, or you don't feel like you're being seen or expressed, and there's a lot of violence in your community, you're going to carry your power with you, not only through what you wear and how you move, but also what you spray paint on walls, and also in terms of, claiming space through sound. You're going to know that I'm coming through by the sound that I carry, and that sound is going to be powerful, and like Caitlin said up here, it's going to be compelling, right? It's going to be compelling. It's actually going to cause you to pause and say, what's going on? You might even like it, or you might say, you might not like it, but you might like it and say, okay, I want to know what that's about. And so you had these MCs and these DJs who would hook up their turntables, the record players, turntables to outside outlets on parking lots and playgrounds, and they would have battles. But instead of fighting each other, which was often expected in these communities, they would have battles in terms of what MC or rapper they liked the best, right? And MC actually meant either master of ceremony or mistress of ceremony or move the crowd, right? So you'd have one DJ here and one MC here in a parking lot playing music, rapping, and the crowd would come dance. Right? They express themselves powerfully for dance. How many people like to dance? Raise your hand and go to clubs. What do you like about dancing? When you're not feeling like not to go hook up and all that stuff. What do you like about going to dances? Yeah. Expression. What else? Good. Right. Expression, releasing of emotion. It's actually a reclamation or reclaiming the body and your emotions. So if you imagine that you're feeling constrained by poverty or constrained by building or where you live or by noise or by police, it's nice to reclaim the body through dance, right? And not worry about things, right? Bob Marley, when the beat hits, you feel no pain, right? Okay. So you would have these dance parties, these dance battles by MCs and DJs who were hooking up their own music, and if the crowd liked one MC or one DJ, they would stay there, and then you'd have the other DJ and the other MC provide an alternative dance, alternative music, and they would go back and forth depending on who they liked the best. So that was kind of the origins of battles between DJing, MCing, and then later Bboying. So again, this is with no money, with little resources, and under a lot of duress. So, what does that have to do with being in community? And how might this be a useful framework? Okay. I would argue that the elements of hip hop are elements that are a part of any good and active and evolving community. And we can look at it as a way to reframe it, these elements as such. So B-boy and B-girling, expressing or embodying your membership to a community through style and practice. This could be individual or group expression. Master or mistress of ceremony, facilitating or co-creating space for authentic and creative communication. I'm going to go over this a little bit in a second. DJing. DJing was the original mashup, right, without videos. Bringing together diverse and conflicting perspectives into a meaningful track or vision, right? So the sampling, all these different ideas and perspectives and bringing it together in some meta, bigger, larger vision. How do we bring diversity into community? Graffiti, creating art that reflects who your community is and also who it might become. And knowledge, creating a caring community of reflection, evaluation, and experiment. Right? So let's look at the first one. Expressing and embodying community membership through style and practice. Let me see. I see 1, 2, 3, 4. So if you're wearing anything that's a sorority or fraternity shirt, yeah, I saw you. Stand up real quick. Right? So this is one way to signify who you are and what community you belong to, right? You are embodying community membership through your style, right? You're signifying. It might not be with fat laces, it might not be with a hat. You can sit down now. Thank you. This guy, what's your name right here with the, yeah, what's your name? What? Gotcha. Vaughn had the expression of when there's a stand-up comedian and he points out the person in the first row, and I was looking at him like, made me laugh a little bit. So, but anyways, the point is that we all adorn our bodies in ways that express who we are, right? That could be ethnically, that could be in terms of affiliations. You'll see most administrators here wearing, at least tucking in their shirt, right? This notion of professionalism, the way to embody or express a certain type of membership. What we saw with hip hop is that you had dance battles, right? You had these practices that they did. You had routines. You had rituals. What are some rituals that are done in sorority fraternities over the years? What are some things that are common in sorority fraternities? So there's rush, right? There's initiation. What type of initiation? Right. And you're initiated by those who are already members, right? And then you become active. You become part of the community. And prior to the initiation, don't you have to demonstrate some type of competency or your value to that community? Right? How do you do that? How do people do that within the context of sororities and fraternities? How do you demonstrate your worth getting in? Again, things that we should hear about in the classroom. Yeah?
You kind of show me
Yeah, what abilities or gifts that you can bring to the organization? Okay, what else?
An understanding of the sorority or fraternity's values.
Yes, yes, an explicit understanding of their values and what they mean for and their purpose. Absolutely. What else?
Some have to pledge to do certain tasks, some to help out and support.
Yeah, yeah, you have to fill a certain role, right? Good. One more person. What else do you have to do? Yeah.
If this had like a weekly chapter meeting,
Right.
so you're all gathering at the same time.
Yep. Right. Good. You have to attend meetings so that the ideas of who you are and what you're wanting to be can be expressed and embodied, both as individuals and as a group, right? Yeah? Yeah, it's okay. So the idea is that there are communities of practice, and that we see that we embody those communities through our style and practice, our rituals. Every community does this. Okay? MCing, master or mistress of ceremony, or moving the crowd. So the idea that, I think when most people see hip hop or think of hip hop, they think of rapping, right? And they usually think of rapping that comes from a particular era, or a particular style or genre, gangster rapping that seems very, very egocentric, all about the self, right? And what I'm gonna get, right? And that's just one small aspect of hip hop after the market got after it. But we see originally hip hop came from, or MCing came from people sitting in a circle or standing in a circle on a street and facilitating conversations that were spontaneous, authentic. Right? These are called ciphers. You're calling freestyles. Right? So people were really speaking to what was present for them, what was on their mind, while they were maintaining the beat of the collective. So it wasn't just about me. It's about how do I create a space or co-create a space where other voices can be heard, right? I'm not making this just simple or cool analogy. I'm just like, this is actually what folks did, right? And so think about the MC as the facilitator or somebody who's co-designing or creating spaces where people's voices can be heard. One of the things that we often say in our class, or have said that we discovered in our class, our section, is that if you have a tendency to speak up a lot, be aware of that tendency and maybe, not speak up so much so other people can be heard. You have a tendency to not speak up enough, be aware of that and choose to speak up sometimes. But good leaders and a good leadership community creates a space where there's authentic and creative communication, or a cipher. I've already mentioned DJing, I already mentioned graffiti, and I've already mentioned knowledge. So in the last couple of minutes, 10 minutes we have, I have two questions for you. How do you or your community do the following? Meaning, how do you b-boy, b-girl in your own way, MC, DJ, create art, and share knowledge? How do you do that as emerging leaders or leaders in your community? Or, where do you see that following best modeled in the world? And that can be, where do you see that these elements of being in community modeled here on campus, in families, in a religious organization, in a political organization? Where do you see these best modeled from your perspective? Okay, deeply relational leadership model. So, pair up with somebody right next to you, right? Pair up with somebody right next to you, and answer these two questions in the next 5 minutes. Okay? All right, if you hear me, clap once. If you hear me, clap twice. So we got 4 more minutes, and I'm gonna ask you to be really, really present for these 4 minutes, okay? Don't check out yet. Check out after you leave the door, okay? Stay present. So let's hear from a couple of people. Let's hear from 3 people where they see how you and your community is doing this, or where you see it best modeled. Yep.
The very first thing I thought of was high school.
Little louder, please.
The very first thing I thought of was high school rallies.
High school rallies.
And just every single element, you're coming together, trying to unite your school, each class is representing yourself, each student is representing itself. You have someone that's kind of like running the show, the grassroots ceremony, you watch people making music, you have people making art, you have they
Right.
also unite themselves as students.
All right, good. Good, good, good. Let's hear from a couple other people. Thank you. Is something, George, or no?
Oh, I was looking for
Okay. Okay, yeah.
We thought that we related it to basketball games or dances or like any sport activity because people are coming together to support their school.
Can folks over here, I know you're whispering to each other, but it's distracting to me, and it's probably distracting the whole field here, okay? So please listen, let's stay focused. Thank you.
So and then for the second question, we didn't think that there was one place that it all comes together. We thought that it's all around us, where you can see a community and everything all around you. And that's what
So you see this mostly, you've seen this expressed powerfully at sporting events and also in different communities around you, okay? So anybody have anybody here have a specific example where they see this or they're actually doing this in their own way? Yeah.
A lot of our professors or discussion groups tend to bring different people with different thoughts together, and that allows us all to have a good environment to share what we think and feel, so I thought that's a good way to bring in community together.
Okay. So you're seeing it modeled by some of your professors? That's good. That's really, really, that's, I don't usually hear that a lot, so that's good. Good. One last person. You're pointing, who am I missing here?
Sorry, kind of going off that, I see it a lot in the Hutchins program, because like, that's like literally all we do, is just like, we come together and everyone comes from different backgrounds and stuff, and the teacher's basically just facilitating it, and then we have to like, kind of create our own environment and our own community.
So again, you're seeing it through your academic courses, specifically Hutchins. Good. Good. So this is a really last thing, the emergence of movements from a theorist named Margaret Wheatley. They first started as kind of networks, and then they moved to communities of practice, and then move into systems of influence. Okay. So this is how movements grow. So if you think of hip hop as a network, think about it as early on as there are people on maybe, you know, this MC and this DJ, this B-boy, B-girl on this block, this group over on another block, and they would start to network and know each other, right? And then over time, those networks would expand across the country, and then these elements were formed. Okay, hip hop is about expressing myself individually and collectively through these practices, these rituals that every community does in some fashion, right? Give an example from sororities and fraternities. That there's some type of practices that communities are doing, right? So we're moving from just networking to, okay, these are some of the things that we do as a leadership team. These are some things that we do as a sorority, as an ethnic club, as a cultural club, as a political organization. These are our practices that really make us who we are. And then based on the impact of those practices, it can really influence systems of power. Okay, it grows. So hip hop is now, you know, part of a, you know, for good or for bad, part of a multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar economy, started by kids who had no money, and it's global, affecting what people make, sell, for good or for bad. It is now impacting systems of influence. It's a system of influence. It's impacting how we speak, right? When anytime you have Bugs Bunny or other characters rapping, you know that you've penetrated the mainstream. All right. Okay, thank you very much.